Philanthropy in the greater world of money is not a large asset.
Less than 2% of annual global philanthropic giving goes to climate and nature.
But actually, small tails can wag big dogs if you spend the money really thoughtfully. And that's what Gaia is really all about.
Gaia itself means giving to amplify Earth action.
And it's designed to bridge that $1 trillion gap for climate and nature financing.
Gaia is able to leverage the incredible power of the World Economic Forum in terms of bringing senior stakeholders together from business, government, and beyond.
The forum is so obviously the right place to have this initiative, the philanthropic money being part of that multi-stakeholder approach.
The forum can do that well is because these people are here. You have a number of people who are willing to give back a certain amount of their means to the cause in which they believe.
That's really important because sometimes I think in the philanthropy space, we tend to talk to other funders and don't necessarily bring the right people in the room.
For the first time, when I'm thinking about the climate agenda, I feel hope because I don't feel alone.
And really what we hope to do is that we create a lot more impact. Not just one time, but 5 times, 10 times, and 20 times of what we can do if we were to collaborate and work with one another.
And the Gaia Awards are one element of that. The idea is to ask the question, where is philanthropic money being used really creatively alongside private money and public money?
Everybody needs that global inspiration. So that's what these lighthouse projects, these lighthouse initiatives, and that's what the awards are about.
We need humanity to solve all problems. This is not one person, it's the whole humanity with its common challenge and common wish.
And this is really everyone's problem now, and it's also everyone's opportunity to find solutions.
From governments and business to civil society and academia, join us in scaling these efforts to turn today's ideas into tomorrow's solutions and to build a better future where there are opportunities for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luis Alvarado. I'm the head of the Gaia program at the World Economic Forum, which is a new muscle that the forum is building to really design strategic public-private philanthropic collaborations designed to help address market failures, remove obstacles, to really get markets to shift faster when it comes to the climate and nature agenda. I'm very proud to invite you all to this panel of titans from the industry. We have a very exciting panel today with different type of leaders that representing different types of capital. So that's what really Gaia is about, mobilizing the capital stack in creative ways and finding common solutions, breaking those silos across these different organizations to really push this agenda forward. So with that note, I'll hand it over to our moderator, who will kick off the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this session. My name is Lutfey Siddiqi. I'm the special envoy of the head of the interim government of Bangladesh. Have been involved with Gaia and the World Economic Forum on this project through the Global Future Council. So climate finance, or just the climate agenda, everyone remembers 2015 as a pivotal year. It's the year of not just Paris climate, but also the year of the SDGs. And for me, it's probably the first time, at that time being in the private sector, I took notice of this whole area. Until then, the idea was that both the funding and intellectual capital will come from either government sources, NGOs, academia. This is not something for the private sector. And I think Paris really brought it right into saliency that we need to expand the envelope of the financial system, the sources of funds that are required in scale to be deployed for climate and nature. So in that spirit, we have the makeup of today's panel. We have people from outside of those traditional sources. So you have family office, philanthropic foundations, you have sovereign wealth fund, you have bulge bracket wealth management. And to see if we can really bring these sources to bear, but not just in isolation, in partnership. That's the key word of the 4 Ps is how can the previous 3 Ps come together, blend, not just in a linear sequential way, but in some sort of a smart blended manner, so that 1 + 1 is 15. I want to mention just Bangladesh briefly, because it is one of the most climate-affected countries in the world right now. Climate change is here already. It's just not distributed evenly right now. It's not a 2050 event for a country like Bangladesh. It's happening right now. The physical hazards remain in place. So any mitigation efforts that we can fund will directly impact lives and livelihoods in a country like Bangladesh. So if you really want to imagine and visualize the beneficiary of the work that all of you do and the outcome of the discussion that we have, imagine we have, well, actually you don't have to. You have somebody from Bangladesh over here. It's me that you will be benefiting in that process. So the way we'll do this today is that I will introduce our distinguished panelists one by one, but rather than read all the bios at the same time, I will introduce them and ask them to make some opening remarks to set up their stall. Once we go through one round, I will ask one set of follow-up questions, and then it'll be open to all of you to ask questions. If there aren't any, then I have some backup questions that I can go into. All right, so with that as the order of proceedings, let me turn to our first speaker, Ray Dalio. Ray is founder of Dalio Family Office and global co-chair of Gaia. His groundbreaking investment strategies have transformed the way global institutions approach investing, earning him numerous lifetime achievement awards. In terms of mainstream finance, there is no bigger player you can think of. But over the decades, he has served as not just a macroeconomic advisor to policymakers, but more recently, his philanthropic work with OceanX has been groundbreaking as well. So Ray, I'm going to withhold a leading question and really ask you to set up your stall the way you see fit, given the title of this session.
Thank you. A few things have come together, and you mentioned Bangladesh. I think I have to mention Mohammed Yunus and Gaia. And Mohammed Yunus was the inventor of microfinance. So he thought about it in a whole different way. He thought about business, social enterprises in a whole different way. There was a problem with climate finance that I would see. In terms of raising money, it was impractical. Something like $8 trillion has to be raised to deal with the number. And a practical approach would be to look at who has how much money and what their motivations are. But it was more of a, you should donate, or you should do this. Philanthropy, for example, is a tiny amount of money. There are different self-interests. So what Mohammed Yunus did with microfinance and what the Gaia approach was, is the recognition that you have to deal with the self-interests of the various people to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So my background is that I'm a global macro investor, and we know each other in that sort of capacity. And I think of Dilhan and Temasek and other institutional investors along those lines. And I think, well, what do I want to do? I'm a philanthropist and I'm a global investor. And I know that the largest pool of money in the world is institutional investment money, but he has a responsibility and they have a responsibility to make returns. And there are opportunities to make returns. So when we go around the panel, what we're going to see is to take people where they are and what their self-interests are, and then to bring them together. What Gaia has done by the 4 Ps, we think about the 4 Ps, philanthropic, public, so the governments matter, and private, so private companies matter, in partnership, and bringing those together. Now, my passion in my particular area is ocean exploration. Jacques Cousteau had an effect on me, and so as a result, I support ocean exploration. We have a ship. If anybody's interested in what it does, there's a series on Disney Plus called Ocean Explorers. You can see what it is. We want to do what he did, bring it to the attention of the world and make them love it and all of that. But we each have our interests. So what I love about Gaia, and what I believe is the right approach, is finding the economic ways of achieving these partnerships. So as we go around, Fred and I have done things together. We've all done things together. That partnership of finding out, well, what is your interest and how can you make it work, bringing what you have that's going to be able to make it work. Right. So that's the way. It's a new form, just the same as Muhammad Yunus almost created a new form. Gaia is creating a new form of networking among those groups to make good things happen. And that's what I'm excited about.
And you have faith that aligning self-interests will get us to the result, or the interests are too...
You will not get the results. Take that $8 trillion a year. Yeah. That's one way or another you're going to spend something like that number, either because you're dealing with the damage or the prevention and so on. If you don't go to each of their interests, and you just say, oh, philanthropy should give a certain amount, or this should give a certain amount, and they say governments have money. Governments don't have money. They get it from taxpayers. When the taxpayers, investors, banks, they say banks have money, but the banks have to have returns that are going to give to their people who give them the money. Unless you start to take a practical approach of understanding what their self-interests are. But self-interest doesn't mean that they don't have a double bottom line, care about social interests. I know he does. I know the investors I'm dealing with do. And so when we find out how to solve that puzzle together, we can make things happen. That's what the Gaia approach is.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Dilhan Pillay Sandrasegara, Executive Director and CEO of Temasek. Under his leadership, Temasek has emerged as a global leader in advancing sustainability and innovation, directing capital towards impactful solutions that address some of the world's most urgent challenges. Dilhan, if I could invite you, please, to set up your stall for this session.
Thank you. We're very often characterized as a sovereign wealth fund, but in actual fact, we're not a fund. We're actually a company, like an investment company. We own our own assets, unlike a fund, where they actually manage the capital of others and generally linked to the mandate given to them. We have one single mandate given by our shareholder, which is to deliver sustainable returns over the long term, preferably above our cost of capital. And the benefit we have is that we have no duration risk to our capital. So effectively, it's long dated if we wish it to be, short dated if we wish it to be. As a result of that, and we celebrated our 50th year last year, we recognize that we're really a steward of the assets that we have sort of inherited, and therefore stewards of how we make use of those assets for future returns. And so we have believed for a long time, and this was started really by my predecessor, who should get all the credit for what we've been doing, to be honest, is that we have three roles. We are primarily known as an investment house, so therefore we're an investor, and we have to be an investor for the long term. The second is that we believe that, and therefore we should do well as an investor. The second is that we should be thinking of ourselves as a forward-looking institution, and therefore do right. And the third is think of ourselves as a steward for our various constituents or stakeholders, and therefore do good as well. So we believe that we have to do well, do right, and do good. But let's face it, we can't do right and do good if we don't do well in the first place, right? So that's why we should always strive for the best returns that we can get according to the risk we're prepared to take. So if I come back to Temasek, we have a broad portfolio of assets made up of global direct investments, which are typically minority investments across many sectors around the world. But we also have portfolio companies that we have inherited over the last 50 years, and they account for roughly about $150 billion of revenue, which is consolidated with our balance sheet. So that's $150,000 of risk, put it that way. And the third is, of course, we have funds and platforms where we've invested with others or they've invested with us. Now, the thing is, in that middle category of operating assets, we have assets which are in hard-to-abate sectors. So we have power generation companies, which are which have to actually utilize natural gas because Singapore is constrained by land and constrained by cloud cover to have renewable energy, for example. We have an airline, and that's an issue for decarbonization. We have a global ports business. So if you have those sort of things...
What percentage would you say of your total portfolio is these hard-to-abate sectors?
By portfolio value, it's about 12%, thereabouts, you know. But I would say that if you think about the impact on revenue and so on, it's larger.
I see.
Okay. So if you think about if you start off by saying that you own these assets, and therefore, if you're thinking about long-term sustainable returns, you've got to be careful about what these assets have to become in order to deliver to you those financial returns. You realize that today, you've got to start investing in things on a transition journey that ensures that you preserve or enhance the value of what you already have going into the future in 10 years' time. Now, if I only had a 5-year mandate, I may not have to think so hard about this. But if I'm going to hold these assets for a long term, then I've got to think about what it means to be in a climate-challenged position. And so that's what motivates us to invest in things like sustainability-focused sectors or sustainable solutions, whether it's green hydrogen or whether it's sustainable aviation fuel or whether it's even nuclear energy or carbon capture, because we have those assets. Now, separate from that, we recognize that because we're multiple stakeholders and because we operate all over the world, we have to make sure that we're responsible to the community in which we operate. And hence, whether it's social issues or whether it's linked to natural capital, we have to ensure that we do our bit. And likewise in Singapore, because we're an island, and 35% of our land is impacted by rising sea levels. So it's an issue that we face directly. But as much as we face it, we have to recognize that in other places where we operate, the same issues may arise. And therefore, the need to join with people like Ray and Fred and others to our philanthropic arm, which is the Temasek Trust and Temasek Foundation, is critical to us. So they get funded largely from the profits or the returns that we make from our investment portfolio. Like I said, do well, do right, and do good. But much of what we do through them, because that's where we built up muscle to work with other like-minded investors. I call it a coalition of willing to address the bigger problems around the world. And I think all investors have things like that. What portion of your capital are you prepared to set aside for these bigger picture issues? Because if it's only to reinvest back in financial returns, it's fine, you can do that. But at some point in time, the world is changing. It's going to affect your ability to deploy capital in which way, in the way you want to do so. So that's what we...
So do you think of it as an almost option premium, or do you set aside?
No, well, we don't look at it that way. We just think as a responsible investor, as a responsible corporate citizen, part of our returns every year above our cost of capital should be set aside, put into the philanthropic arm, and for them to then come up with programs and so on, because we believe that it is something that's necessary for us to give back to communities from which we have derived a financial return from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I'll come back on this point, because there's two motivations there. Right? One is giving back, because we want to, we appreciate that we benefit from the community that we're in. The other is to say that if your investment horizon is long enough, then sustainability and commercial considerations are one and the same.
Yeah. It's our double bottom line.
Yeah, double bottom.
If you can put it that way.
Okay, we'll put it that way. Thank you very much, Dilhan. Next up is Beatriz Martin Jimenez, President of Europe, Middle East and Africa, and member of the Group Executive Board at UBS. Bear also serves as the Group Executive Board lead for sustainability and impact, spearheading UBS's commitment to driving positive change through responsible and sustainable financial practices, playing a pivotal role in shaping the strategy, the global sustainability strategy of the firm, leveraging expertise right across the group. Bear, over to you for your opening comments.
Thank you, Lutfey. I mean, a lot has been said already, but obviously UBS as a bank, I think we deal with a lot of clients. Obviously being the only truly global wealth manager, we deal with a lot of wealth management clients, family offices. There are some of them represented here in the round. But, for us and our clients, I think it's very important to think about, sustainability in the ways that Dilhan was just describing. And so what we found is that there is a belief that, the sustainability agenda is no longer in vogue or that clients are not interested in, sustainability themes. However, I think when you look at our clients and we look at how they are thinking about sustainability for the long term, institutional clients, they are living, the change and the climate change, and they are seeing the impact of those, events into their own businesses in terms of either higher costs, disruption in value in chains, or even, if you are if you're an insurer, suddenly all these, natural catastrophes and how to think about that. And so the impact on your portfolio, on your valuation, and potentially the investments that you need to make if you are a corporation or a financial institution in terms of taking, sustainability, climate change into your valuations, taking that into account. If you're a wealth management client or a family office, I think, what we have seen is that, Ray alluded to that before, everybody has a passion, right? Everybody wants to have an impact on certain parts, whether it's oceans, whether it's education, whether it's, giving back, philanthropic, or even investing. I think it's important also to think about that, if you look at the private sectors, so private credit, private equity, and the technological change that we have seen, there is a lot that is been happening in this sector as well. So in the private space, around 20% of all the deals that we've seen in 2024 are somehow, connected to sustainability in one way or another. And we've seen a huge amount of, tech innovation coming through for carbon capture and others, where, we see true investments that are definitely returning, market returns. So this landscape is changing, and I think that, that choice, or that, you have to choose between doing good or, doing well. I think it's converging in a way, and there is quite a lot of opportunities to bring these four Ps together and think about solutions where everybody is getting what they want out of those.
Fantastic, thank you for that. So it's not weird to bring this into conversations with your mainstream investors.
No, absolutely not.
And in fact, it looks like some of the services you guys provide is actually the structuring of how does it fit into your portfolio in a well-designed manner. Next up is Mr. Chavalit Frederick Tsao, chairman of TPC. TPC is a family business, a purpose-led family business with a rich history dating back to the late 1800s. Wow. Under his leadership, TPC has evolved into a global ecosystem driving sustainable development, particularly in the maritime and logistics sectors. Mr. Tsao, over to you, please, for your opening remarks.
Yes, being a steward of a family business from China, I have to steward a number of things. Of course, family business is already aligned to go cross-generation sustainability and finding solutions to sustainability. It's always in family business mind, whether we can find it or not is not. But every generation, as it changed, there are other factors of sustainability coming in. Today, of course, has never been such a big challenge. Of course, we talk about heritage. Well, heritage is kind of covered how we do things, what we can do, what we should not do, and this sort of things. And we have to maintain the heritage essence, our values that express in the modern times or the changing times. And then we have to deal with legacy, which is changing. Now, the legacy is the purpose-led. Our company's mission is to serve the well-being of life while creating wealth. Now, the creating wealth, you need to constantly be creative into creating new business model that makes sense. And how we see the world changes how we think, feel, and choose. And we're constantly changing the way we see the world. So the economics, which is activities to reach our desire, will change as we change the way we do the narrative, the world, our own narrative, our identity. And so for us, the stability of that and understanding where the world is changing, and certainly, you know, we have the yin and yang. It's maybe a little dark right now, but we see this bright light, we see right here. And this bright light is purpose-led. And when the bright white eye of the black fish happens, you know the era is going to be the white fish until you see the darkness come. So I maintain very positive, and that, you know, that actually challenges like this informs us how we will evolve into the next level of culture and civilization. So I'm very positive. Now, we need a theory of change. We need a theory of systemic intervention. We need to have a constructed management system to deliver this. And of course, this is always something challenging. So I actually spent a lot of time, and I just wrote the book, which I give you, about impact investing for life flourishing as from this family business point of view and how we do things. And I think that, you know, the business is to do that. We need to put different competence. So instead of just having the family side with the philanthropy, different motivation, business does philanthropy with purpose to drive business agenda as well, because ultimately we have to sustain and grow. So how do we integrate ourselves? Because we don't have philanthropy money before, but now we have that. So we have Restore Nature with environment dealing, Octave, which is individual and social transformation to deal with both the environment and also the social dimension, and coordinated by our number 17 foundation, because we believe everything is a co-creation. There's nothing we can do alone. And so this is deeply have to do. And then we make our executive go through a program called Quantum Leadership, which is their own transformation. And then they have to work for the nonprofit in rotation. So aim together with the nonprofit sector, because then we have the best brand in systemic intervention. And if we can create a business model to solve the problem, especially in our area, which we do farming and the ocean, so we cover both, but it's a bigger agenda, and ultimately we need social transformation. And this way, if we can produce a solution to the supply chain that we see, and build new supply chain was coming up, like energy transition, so you're not going to fossil fuel to this, chemical from inorganic to organic, so you need to come with time. Once we can create, then number one, the industry have a solution, and money can have an asset class to put money in.
Can I, so I'm going to ask one round of questions, but could I get a sense of whether there are questions in the audience or how many there will be? Okay, good. So we will need to make sure there's time for that. So Ray, if I could come back to you on, so you very convincingly articulated the case for the alignment of interests of the 3 Ps to then form the partnership. Why doesn't it happen naturally? What's the orchestration required? Who should go first? How do we deal with the execution, the implementation of this partnership?
It doesn't happen naturally. First of all, I think it's almost like when Muhammad Yunus decided microfinance, you know, it wasn't happening naturally. So when I looked at the raising of money for climate, that's right, and I asked about that, I think it's a lot of do-gooders, and I mean that as a compliment, not as it might sound, right, but do-gooders who may not be looking at the practicality of what does it take to turn loose money. And so I think there's that element. And then I don't know of organizations that have this no obligation, just let's network So now I get together and I network with people who have passions about ocean and doing things. Right. And their governments and their companies and their individuals, and we get together and we brainstorm and we do things. There was not a good convener. I think the World Economic Forum is the world's greatest convener. So by putting these people together and creating this environment, that, you know, that's how it's come about. So I think it's probably being theoretical. You know, the theoretical should. We should invest $8 trillion in that because the world will be better off. So partially the theoretical should, and then partially I think it's just the, you know, forum to get together and brainstorm.
Thank you. Dilhan, I guess a related question for you is, again, you've made the case that there is a convergence of interests if you look at your risks widely enough and your horizon long enough and a sense of obligation which is also wide enough. Why don't more people take that view? What would it take to have the Temasek approach being adopted at scale more widely?
It goes back to your mandate, isn't it? Because if you have a mandate to just give returns, you know, that's a mandate. That's your fiduciary obligation to whoever's providing you with the money. That's the reason why we've seen this real fracturing of views on ESG, for example. Right? If your fund is an ESG fund, fine. Everybody understands that you have a double bottom line, maybe a triple bottom line. But if it's not, then your obligation is to get the best possible returns for your investor.
But did you have to rewrite your mandate, or are you operating within the original mandate?
No, because we have a broad mandate to deliver, you know, sustainable returns for the long term. But to get there, we have over the years figured out that we just can't be investing only, and we have to think about other dimensions, including the social part. You know, you think about workforce transformation in the context of digitalization and AI. That's a responsibility we feel that we have, you know, as we think about, you know, what it means for workforce transformation in line with business transformation. But climate change is also part of that, because if we don't address the issues, at some point in time, we're going to pay for it. Now, if we could sell the assets, it's different, right? But, you know, these operating companies that we have and we've had for 50 years, we have a long-term responsibility to hold those assets. And therefore, we have to make sure that those assets derive the best benefit they could possibly do, not just for financial returns, but also for the other things that they do for Singapore and more broadly.
May I add an example?
Yes, sure.
A couple of things. Bill Gates' breakthrough energy is, I think, such a good example.
Yeah.
Like, I know these institutional investors we've dealt with here. If I bring them a good investment, a great investment, they'll invest. Why wouldn't they invest if it has not only a good return, but a good bottom line? Bill Gates, when he wanted to do breakthrough energy, he did that on the basis of a commercial return as well as the impact. Wow, he's financed innovation. When I was at the COP28 meeting in Dubai, and I have the ship, and which is an exploration. I have all of these entrepreneurs who have these great ideas. I think to myself, I need to create a venture capital fund because I want to invest in them. I'm getting a double bottom line if I invest in them. And so then I think, okay, who should I do that with? And then I know that if I do that and I have some credibility with the institutional investors, they say, well, Ray, if you're putting your own money in and you're really, then you build a track record and do these things.
Right.
That's not being done.
Right.
Why not?
Because you're not convening, going back to your previous answer?
Because the idea, the thinking about it, the demonstrating it, Bill Gates is, on his fund has done fantastic both ways.
Yeah.
So you want to invest in it.
Right.
Okay, now the world wants to invest in it. Well, why not a bunch of those?
I see.
Yeah, the demonstration, the not being idealistic, but being practical and then delivering.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Okay. In the interest of time, can I go to Q&A and I'll make sure the first two come to you guys, or would you like to?
Perfectly.
Okay. Who would like to ask the first question? Please.
Hi, my name is Roxana. I'm head of climate programs at a nonprofit. What I've been feeling lately is a general climate fatigue generated by the fact that we have such a large list of crises, pandemics, wars, that are competing. So there's a natural prioritization going on. So my question is, how do we make sure that climate stays at the top of the list of priorities?
It's got to be either Fred or Bear who answers that question.
Fred, you go.
You know, climate, that's everything, isn't it? Climate and nature, what Gaia is pushing, what the whole thing, it's all holistic. Climate change is all pollution put up by humans, including ones they put into their own mind that created. So social, environmental, all has an impact on climate. So when you talk about climate, it's so holistic, that's why you need a system. And then earlier we talked about, really what Ray say is, yeah, people don't listen, show and tell. Show me the money and the whole world will jump on board. Show me that you can reach double bottom line and make money. And the people says, then the money will go in. Today, impact investment is really difficult to invest because you have very little to invest. But why? Because you need business to take that responsibility of tripartite. Business drives the market economy, drives the transformation. So business is responsible to take the lead in public-private philanthropic. Now, you're there philanthropic. I'm afraid you're not the right. Business is the one to take a lead and work with you.
Great, so P, the private P takes the lead. A question from here, please. Do you want to just stand up and ask, please? Yeah.
So hi, my name is Enrica, and I'm based in London, but I work in impact investment, and I've done so for a number of years. I'm also a young global leader appointed by the World Economic Forum, and it's such a pleasure to be here. So my background, private equity finance, started off, just investing for return. I moved into what I call softer funding, understanding different business models, and thinking about the double, triple bottom line. So my question is this. Ray, to your point, I think the COP28 remarks you made reverberated subsequently, where you just absolutely said that private sector will need to see returns that make sense to invest. And investments have to be investable for you to invest. But I do think that there is a spectrum of capital, and when we think about investing, and when you think about scalability, a lot of things are usually just pulled into one bucket.
Is there a question?
There is a question, and it's coming now. So the question is this: do you think that there are other models, other tools, other instruments that need to emerge for us to be able to capture, innovation across the spectrum and value chain? Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I will, So I think what you're alluding to is that, at times some of these investments are not investable or they're too risky for the returns that they bring, right? And what you're saying is at times you can use other instruments, other tools, such as, for example, blended finance, where you can, use catalytic capital, philanthropic capital, to protect some of the losses that, could floor in the portfolio, or in the investment portfolio, which, by the way, if you go back to the microfinance, you will see that it's a perceived risk at times, right? And so, yes, I think there is a lot of other instruments that you can use in order to unlock that investment. I also feel like, all the examples that you're seeing here, it is about scale. It is not that, capital is not being put to work in, climate change or any sustainability themes. It is about the question of how to scale that investment, right? And that is where I think meeting together, showing that you're able to make those returns, that you can build up that track record is very important, right?
Thank you, Bear. Who did the mic go to just now? Was someone over there? No, I think it was the lady over there. Yes. Mark. Yeah, Mark, I thought you wanted it. There's not a time for politeness.
time for time.
Please.
Hi, I'm Christy Burley. I'm one of the global shapers as part of the World Economic Forum. Thank you so much for this great discussion. I want to hear how you, in your organizations, think about intergenerational leadership and integrating kind of young scientists, academics, activists within these decisions as well, and not just from a funding perspective. Thank you.
Dilhan, would you like to take that?
Yeah, so it's very, very complicated to do that in an investment company, okay? And the reason is that when you start by saying you have to do well, the tendency is that you have investment folks taking the lead. So you got to build your muscle up in different areas, and you got to bring people in and give them something where they own the outcomes itself. So we have a sustainability group.
Who has the mic?
Which is made up of folks who are very focused on that. In fact, one of my former colleagues is now the managing director for climate change at the WEF. And those folks come with a view towards looking at evaluating the potential solutions, what we call sustainable solutions, which could be commercialized at some point in time in the future. But that's because we take a longer duration perspective from those sort of investments or those sort of solutions. And it's a mixture of people. When I read their CVs, I couldn't figure out most of what they were doing, but that's the way you keep educating yourself. Now, I have a new group which is called Emerging Technologies, where I've got people there to look at innovations at the TRL3 level. So that's even, at times pre-seed. And the reason for that is...
Can I just ask, is this part of Temasek proper?
Yeah, part of Temasek proper.
Okay.
So I'm coming back to foundation. That's different.
Right.
And the reason why I did that is because it's one thing to look at a road ahead. You can't try to figure out a road around the corner.
Yes.
And if you're a long-term investor, that's what bothers me the most. Not what's happening in the next 5 years, what's happening in the next 10 years. And I'm not going to be around running the company to figure that out. It's going to be my successor. But we've got to make sure that the foundation blocks for them are there, so that when they take over the portfolio in 5, 6 years' time, at least we've given them some muscle to deal with the issues that they're going to face, and maybe be able to identify solutions that could be helpful as they think about how to invest and where to invest, or how to deal with the companies that we already own. Now, separately, for certain types of skills, we can't have it within Temasek, because people like that may not thrive in investment company environment. So that's why we set up Temasek Trust and Temasek Foundation, and we brought people who wanted to be primarily driven by the do good, and rather than do well.
Right.
And we incentivize it. By the way, we pay them properly and so on. A number of my investment folks have left Temasek to join that group because they feel motivated to bring the skills that they have sort of built up in Temasek to things like impact investment, or even looking at impact measurement programs, so that you are able to really determine what's real. Because after all, if you're going to go into impact investment, you need to know, as an investor, that the outcomes are what they're going to be, and that someone's there to provide a proper systems-based approach to be able to actually, in a sense, measure the outcomes, because that's what matters, right? What can be measured actually matters, and investors look for that. So if you have a double bottom line, your first thing is intentionality, right? If you're impact investing.
Yes.
Then you look at the financial returns. But the intentionality is what you need, this convergence between an investment background and a domain background.
Right. Thank you for that. Mark?
I'm a professor of business, and I'm really facing these new MBA students who try to make as much money as possible and say business is to make money as much as possible. So my question is like, do you have trade-off between profit and sustainability? And if yes, how do you manage them? Or somehow they always combine. I find it like very confusing sometimes, the way you answer that question, because I need an answer for my students.
Ray, why don't you give it? I have a view too.
I think you have to ask your students the question: are you thinking what money is for? Because, okay, you're making profits. Do you think how much is enough money? And then when you have a certain amount of money, what is the best use of that money? So I would encourage your students to think about what is money for. I think we get so hung up on the, I'm going to make money, and I'm in business, and I'm going to make profits. And then there's philanthropy. And I think it's more, what do you want to do? Just something like, what do you want to do? And also, I think you have to realize that there are also problems that people have when there's too little money, and there are problems when there's too much money. Like if you think how you're raising your children. Do you want your children to have piles of money? You want them to have strength and character and other things. So I think if you speak to your students about what is it all for and what kind of life you're going to have, that'll help.
Thank you. I think Mark is a great model on, how much money is too much money, and there's a whole book is written about that. We've run out of time, but did you say you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so, I would like to believe, since I've come of that age, is that as you get older, you get more wise, okay? And it comes from exposure, experiences, and so on. And I think that as you get older, you realize that life is more than just about making money. But when you're young, and you've got all that energy and that desire to learn and to put it to good use and to do the best you can in the investment world, I'm okay with them trying to be the best investor they can be. And that means I get the best returns, and I want them to be rewarded for that. And I'll take part of those returns and put it into my foundation to do the other things. Yeah. And I hope that when I pay them that big bonus, they'll take part of it and put it into something that they believe in. And I don't really care what they want to believe in, but they should put it. And I hope they do it from young, because then as they get older, they'll do much more good than what Ray and I could possibly do.
Thank you.
And I think that's what I would hope for.
Thanks very much, everyone. So just before we end, I thought if I could break character for a second and also voice my own opinion on this, because I think we've skirted around the very real issue that this conflation has created instances of impact washing. We've had some egregious cases of pure profit-seeking wrapped in the guise of impact. And so that is for another session, but I do want to put it in there. There is a group of constituents, if you talk to the Bangladeshi over here, there is sometimes a suspicion as to whether the other Ps outside of public are there to supplement, multiply funds, complement with expertise, or are they crowding out the public funds that should be available at scale? Particularly if you're a developing country and you're used to receiving concessional aid for adaptation finance, and now they're telling you, well, actually, you're going to get private sector money coming in who are going to make money but also demonstrate impact. In many cases in the form of debt, which then adds to the debt pool of these developing countries. So there is that suspicion, and I'm sure by convening and by doing it the right way, which is what I know Gaia is doing it, we will overcome that. But I do think we need to recognize it, that there is a view that if you're not blending the three Ps correctly, there is a potential issue of crowding out as opposed to crowding in. And with that, let's bring this to an end. My thanks to the members of the panel, and thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you very much.